professor of history at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. My usual co-host, Ed Hudgins, can't be here today, and Cher Waldiger can't be here today, so I'll be going solo. So what is our show's mission and ethos? It's honesty, it's humility, and it's humanity. We want to have a conversation about these issues where we may not have the answers, but we want to create the connections and help to create pathways for people to come together and to begin to work on these issues. This show is being streamed live in the wake of the riots and the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha. We want to be mindful of that. We want to be mindful of the impact that that is having on our communities of color and on us ourselves. We invite people who have questions about how the Jacob Blake shooting and riots are affecting those of us in the Chippewa Valley to put those into the chat. So, while I don't have Ed and I don't have Sheng, I do have Adam Akula, who is here from CoLab, but he's also on Dancing with the Eau Claire Stars. Could you talk to us a little bit about that real quick?
Thanks, Selika. Yeah, so happy to be here tonight, and I'll be doing the icebreaker question after we hear from all of our panelists. But yeah, if you did want to support the Eau Claire Children's Theater at this time, I'll be Dancing with the Eau Claire Stars on September 17th, and you can vote at dancingwiththeeauclairestars.com.
So, Adam, how can the community participate today?
The community can participate in a couple different ways. So if you're joining us on the live stream on Paragon, you can drop your questions right in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable asking them in the public forum, you can feel free to right-click my name and you can private message them to me. You can also email them if you're listening to our radio broadcast on 99 FM Converge Radio to conversations@tomeswab.com. That's conversations at TOMMESUAB as in boy.com.
So today, we are lucky enough to have three panelists with us who will talk about living and working in Eau Claire in this very, very hyper-white environment. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
My name is Delisha Bates-Hansen, and I am from South Texas. I have lived in the Chippewa Valley for 21 years. I currently reside in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm a graduate from UW Stout, and I'm a social worker at Eau Claire County Department of Human Services.
Cool.
Rachel. My name is Rachel Pride. I grew up here in Eau Claire. I'm 24. I went to South Middle School, Memorial High School. I went to CVTC. I work on progressive campaigns when the work comes around, and I'll be an AmeriCorps member for this upcoming school year.
My name is Raymond Clayton. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I've lived in the Eau Claire area since about 2000. Went to school at Lincoln Elementary before it became the Montessori school, and then I went to DeLong, North. I went to CVTC out here and then went to Minneapolis, and currently I'm finishing my schooling in Full Sail online.
Awesome. So we always like to kind of set the tone a little bit more laid back at the beginning of this because we sometimes do get into some difficult conversations. So I want to ask everybody, and we'll start with Selika and then go down the line with our panelists. What is your favorite thing about the place that you live, whether that be Eau Claire or whether that be somewhere in the surrounding area? What's your favorite thing?
My neighbors in my neighborhood on the west side are really nice. My son had a metal band in our basement, and it was loud as heck. I mean, we came around. We're on this corner, we hit that corner back there, and we heard the music. We're like, oh. And they never called the police on us. They never complained. When he went to college, several came over and said, what happened to the band? So they've been very nice, they've been very welcoming, and they've been very supportive of us. We could keep that snow and that ice, but the neighbors I'd like to keep.
So me and my family, we live on the East Hill, and one thing I really like about my community as well is our neighbors. The East Hill's interesting because we enjoy looking at all the different houses, and one thing that I really have enjoyed during this season, especially with the unrest, is the political signs, the Black Lives Matter signs. As a family, a person of color, it makes me feel good when I'm able to walk down the street with my kids and see people who support me and who I am as a person. So.
Yeah, I live on the East Hill as well. So it's really a community. Like, there's a Facebook group, there's like a neighborhood garden, there's those little pop-up libraries. All that stuff is just like, it makes me feel like I'm a part of a community. Like, if your dog gets out, like, somebody will find your dog and they'll post it in the group and you'll get your dog back. Like, no question, like, it'll be fine. Like, I love that part about it.
I would have to say what I like most about the community is watching the growth. The amount of time that I have been here. When I first moved here, the people of color were lack of there. There was none. Maybe me and one other family, and then just to watch that more people of color slowly move into the city year after year after year. Now that I have a daughter that is growing up in the city as well, I would want to see the growth continue to happen so that it's not as hard for my child to grow up in the city as it was when I grew up in the city.
So northern Wisconsin, I'd like to jump off of that there aren't a lot of people here. And when I came in '93, we joked that we put most of the black residents into Jim Vance's basement, and if somebody had dropped a bomb, all 40 of us would have been gone. North central and northwestern Wisconsin just hasn't had a lot of black people in it. Now, this was a route for the Underground Railroad. Especially people coming from Chicago would come up through here to get to Canada after 1850. And Wisconsin, 1848, was one of the first states, I think it was the first state, to put an anti-slavery clause in its constitution. So you saw people going from Mississippi to Milwaukee because of that. The only lynching of a black man in Wisconsin, I'm not talking about Duluth, Minnesota. Wisconsin is one man who was in a fight. He was in a card fight. It was actually his friend who was in the card fight. The white man they were fighting with tried to stab the friend. The man who wound up lynched stabbed the other card shark, and he was lynched. And that was 1861, right as the Civil War had started. So some of that was a part of the the anti-Civil War fear in Milwaukee. But the majority of lynchings in Wisconsin, the 25 that my students have studied, have actually been either Native American or white. They've been Italian and Germans, because Germans really were the big group here. You really don't get, at least up here, we know that the first resident in this area, Richard Christensen, was a neighbor to Dr. Schofield, who Schofield Hall is named for in the 3rd Ward. And that's interesting because we have a lot of things at the Chippewa Valley Museum. Shout out to Carrie Ronander, thank you for giving us some information here, about restrictive covenants. And restrictive covenants really were a big part of the deeds in the 3rd Ward. So you had this housing discrimination, you also had stereotyping. They had a cakewalk here, and they used the term coon regularly to refer to African Americans. And again, Chippewa Valley Museum has a number of these artifacts. especially the ads. There's one from the Grand Cakewalk, and that's an 1897 ad. By the time you get to the 60s, you're really seeing a very small community here of about 10. So small that really you can't segregate them. And that is really a difference between Eau Claire, Milwaukee, Eau Claire, Los Angeles, which is where my husband's from, and Eau Claire and my native southeastern Louisiana, that still the community is too small. One of the things that makes the Black community unique in Eau Claire is that this is really a hyper-white space. If you add in the Black people in jail, we're 1.9% of the population out of a population that is, for all multicultural people, that's about 10%. If you take out the population in the jail, we're 0.937. If you add people who are other, but are also indicating that it's Black and something, it looks like it's a little over 1.5. So this is a small community. When I came here, this community was so small that everybody Black did the head bob. It didn't matter where you were. You did not need to know them.
Not at all.
You passed them in the mall, what's up? You know, and if you didn't do the head bob, you were gonna get talked to. You know, it's beginning to be enough Black people that we're almost not doing the head bob. But I want to pose the question to my group here. With Black people as just 1% of this population, what are the challenges and opportunities that being part of a hyper minority here have maybe afforded you?
I would say first off, you get looked at for discussions like this because it is such a small group of people that, well, you're not going to include anybody out of the majority, you're going to include people out of that small 1.5% of people.
I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think pretty much all the Black people in Eau Claire know each other, or somebody knows somebody, somebody's family member. So that can always be interesting. If you need your hair done, you can probably find somebody to get your hair done, and it won't be too hard. And things like that. But I think that it's a challenge because it's hard. It was hard for me going to school here. It's like I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And I'm Black and white. So it's like rejection comes from both sides. So that's kind of a challenge. Like, where do I fit? Who am I? That's a journey to kind of figure out one's identity.
I think as a parent of a child who goes to a local elementary school, so I went to her parent-teacher conferences, and they were learning about authors, an author a week. And the teacher had a bulletin board of all the authors that they would talk about that week. And I looked at the board, and I love this teacher. We learned together so much. And I just asked her, I said, you don't have any people of color who are authors on that board? And she's like, oh, I guess now that you say that, there isn't. And I was like, yeah. So, and it was just interesting because talking to her, she's like, I cannot believe I didn't even realize that I have siblings who are adopted, whatever. So as a parent who has, you know, these girls, you know, these brown girls I'm raising and a brown boy in the Chippewa Valley, I'm always like looking at stuff like that because I want them to be represented. And I think like the teachers here, like they don't have to think about that stuff. They're just, you know, used to it. But I think that opened up a conversation with her as well, you know, so, yeah.
Yeah, we're in the beginning stages of this. I remember when my son was in the 2nd grade, teachers were just beginning to understand that they needed to try to work to make students of color welcome in the classroom. But they didn't know how. So Scholastic, I guess, had put something about Kwanzaa crowns in there, and they sent my son home with a Kwanzaa crown. And I called his teacher, and it's like, what is this?
Oh, Black people celebrate Kwanzaa.
We celebrate Kwanzaa, but we don't wear crowns.
Yeah.
we don't have the candles on it. This looks like that Dutch little girl who runs Lucia. And they're like, well, that was in the Scholastic book. And so I found, and even I'm a history professor, but I found that outside I've had to do some education. I was at a church, I won't say the name to protect the guilty, where I said, could we sing some Black urban gospel or even some jazz? And again, like I said, I won't name the priest for, protect the guilty. No, because that might open the door to the polka mass. And I'm like, you got 2 Black families here. Could we? It's Kirk Franklin.
Yeah.
All right. I admit, booty shaking in the church is not something that is regular here, but
no, not at all. That's kind of why I stopped going to church. I don't feel like it's not that I don't want to worship with other people, but it's just not. It just wasn't right. You know what I mean? It just I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there. That was definitely a challenge. It's kind of hard. Like there's like 1 or 2 Black churches here. It's kind of segregated.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a Black church here.
I mean, there's more Black people that go to.
One.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a little.
Yeah.
No, there's a little one.
It is hard when you are this small of a group to get people to recognize some of what you would want to feel a sense of belonging. Have y'all felt any pressure to assimilate? I mean, when I first came here, they dragged me to a country music bar and tried to make me country music line dance. That didn't end well.
Oh.
It did not. And it's like,
I think that's one thing that needs to be looked at more. Just because we're different doesn't mean that we want to be converted into this is how you guys live your life, so this is how we want to live our lives. I see nothing with seeing people as different, but that doesn't mean discriminate or have hatred towards me for being different. Just accept that we're not the same person, and I want to live my life like this, not you conform me to how you live your life. And that's like the acceptance thing that you're talking about. I don't want to do what you're doing. I want to do what I'm doing without repercussions.
And if there's somebody who likes what you're doing, they can join you.
Exactly.
To have these things of interest and not be forced to, well, you're doing that.
Yes, I can definitely, so I grew up in South Texas, and at my elementary school I attended, there's a large population of Mexican students. Some of them didn't speak English, some of them did. There's Black students and white students. And our school, we just celebrated people. We had a mariachi band at the high school, and they would come down for Cinco de Mayo, and when it was Black History Month, we listened to the Temptations. We would make peanut butter, because in Africa, whatever. They just really celebrated us. They looked at us. We even had a polka day. We celebrated everyone. So when I moved up to Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and I attended school in the 5th grade, there was none of that. It was this was Martin Luther King, and he was an African American, and now everything is good. And and it was so sad. So when I look at my experience as a child growing up in Texas, everything was in color. It was so beautiful. Everyone was celebrated. And then coming to Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, everything was in black and white. There was no celebration. We don't acknowledge race. We don't acknowledge differences. And you almost felt like I do have to, at first, as when at first you're almost like a novelty, right? Like, oh, we have this black student here, and all the kids want to hang out with you, and then after a while they don't want to anymore, and then so you do. Like, I would find myself, you know, wanting to straighten my hair and being more like, you know, the white kids or the white girls and stuff like that. And it wasn't like until an adult where I'm like, no, I'm gonna wear my hair natural, and this is just how it is. But yeah, there was, you know, to assimilate, to belong, you almost had to assimilate.
Did you feel that was the same way?
Oh, absolutely. I always wanted my hair to be like long and flowy.
Yeah, so you
and
could go like this.
We got the 4C pattern over here. Like, that was never gonna happen for me. Like, it's not in the cards at all. But I used to relax my hair, and then it was so damaging. It was like physically damaging. You know what I mean? And my confidence was really low, and it was hard to make friends. It's hard. Like, they want to be your friend, but then they just have questions like, how you get your hair to look like that? How do you wash your hair? It's like, what? I'm a person, you know what I mean? I have interests and things that I would like to talk about with people. So, absolutely, of course. I just went natural like 5 years ago, and I had to cut my hair off, and I was like kind of bald-headed for a little while, but it's okay. I was cute. It works out.
You're cute. Your head can
You figure it
that.
out. You figure it out, you know. But I feel you. I wanting to straighten your hair, wanting to fit in, like wanting to wear the same clothes and stuff. And it's like, that's not even, I don't even like this stuff.
Yeah.
This doesn't even look good on me.
You know, I had to cut my hair off because I got chemical burns. Because we tried to relax each other's hair in the halls back when they called them dorms. And there's a reason why people are supposed to not do that.
Yeah.
We left it on too long because, you know, you need to let it burn to get it straighter.
Yeah.
Well, we left it on too long, third-degree burns. So I got forced into being a natural. But all that, and my daughter has come to me and said that as well, because that's what she's surrounded by. We have a question in the chat. Go on ahead, jump in.
And it's funny that you say that your daughter has said that. And I think the thing that people don't realize is that it happens at a young age. My daughter is 6 years old. There's been plenty of times she's already asked me, why does their hair not look like, or why does my hair not look like theirs?
Yeah,
As a 6-year-old, that's not a question you should have to ask.
It's just for me commercials when I was a kid.
Yeah, my daughter, it would have been 5 or 6.
Yeah.
My son was a little later. He was probably about 9. But my son is lighter skinned. So, and we would shave his head. So he was too busy trading cars and throwing things to really worry about it at that age.
What kids should be doing.
Right.
Yes, the things that kids should be doing. You know, so we have a question in the chat. I would like, or I'm sorry, Adam, I'm stepping on you. You're supposed to read it.
No, it's all good. So we've got a question from Andrew here. Andrew is a UW Eau Claire graduate who moved back to Wausau, and he said he watches Eau Claire and sees a lot of rough parallels with Wausau. And he's just wondering, how well are people of color represented on our various city, county, and school boards around the city?
I don't think that they are represented at all.
There's one.
There's one?
Yeah, there's.
There's 2 Hmong representatives and there's 1 Latino representative on city council.
Okay.
But I don't think there are any on the county board.
I was thinking the school board. I thought
Marquel Johnson is the first black person on the school board.
Ever? Oh my goodness.
Burl Middleton, who's my vice president, was the first black person to be a city councilman, but we haven't had one since he ran. And he came off the board, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. But the county board, we do have Zoe Roberts, who is trans, but I don't think we have anyone who's a person of color. And that is something. But, you know, one of the things for me is hyper white in Eau Claire. I don't want to run for office because I have shotguns in my house and I don't want to use them. Yeah. You know, people can get kind of rough up here.
Fight dirty.
They fight dirty. But yeah, it's not really well represented. Now, I think I'm the first minority on the police and fire board Eau Claire Police and Fire Board.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised. So we're beginning to get representation, but I think we have to push. We have to push. Adam, we've got to see. I told y'all we got questions galore coming up.
Oh yeah, we've got this one from Janet, and she's just asking you to maybe comment on the Black history that's taught in the K through 12 schools here. I know you, Delisha, said that it's kind of black and white rather than colorful, how you are maybe used to it. And what are some ways that we can maybe introduce a truer representation of Black history in our schools?
I think that starts at the top, because the curriculum needs to be approved before they can teach it. I think that starts all the way at the top.
I don't think that there's a good representation of history in general in the school system, let alone just the Black part of history in school.
It's whitewashed, and they try to make it they try to deliver it a little bit softer, but that doesn't help anybody.
One thing I found interesting was when I went to Chi High, I took a minorities and history class, and it was only minorities. We did not talk about white people. And I thought that, I remember Mr. Thompson was the history teacher, and he had introduced us to different things that we had never heard of, and he had never heard of either until he went to college and he found these old textbooks, like quadroon balls and stuff like that, just different things that aren't taught. And it was just, that class was just so eye-opening to me. It was like, wow, we've been taught lies for all these years, and now all of a sudden I'm a senior in high school and I'm being taught this gross history of what actually happened. So I don't really know the answer to that question. I do think it starts at the top. I think it's curriculum, like you said. I also don't think teachers will say, because I've had this conversation, we don't have time to incorporate that. But I think you can. When you talk about scientists, I think you can, start incorporating, and here's a Black scientist. I think you could do your research.
They need to make time.
Yeah, I think you could incorporate it.
That's not an answer that I would take. You know what I mean?
And just in my opinion of that too, I don't even think that they should introduce it as this is the Black scientist. This is a scientist.
Yeah.
There should be no, this is a white.
Charles Drew invented plasma.
Yeah, this is just an inventor.
I teach African American history, and the students who come to my class, and I teach pretty full classes. When I first came here, it was 2 sections of 120, and then a third section of 40. Now we're at 2 sections of between 80 to 90. And they all said they wanted the history they didn't get in high school. But then they'd also say, your class is making me angry, because I have them using the primary documents to read about slavery. I have them reading primary documents about the origins of the Civil War. And that's a whole nother day's story. And the Black codes, and reading the oral testimonies. And then I teach them about armed self-defense, and that creates all sorts of havoc. But the problem is history at the K-12 level's been politicized. They want a celebratory history. They don't want a history of resistance. There's that one House of Representatives guy who wants to ban the 1619 Project from being used. 1619 Project's accurate. I mean, there were 5 historians who had a cow because they thought it washed all the white people out. But there's over 3,000 PhD level historians in the United States. And the rest of us refused to sign that letter. That should tell them something about the accuracy of the project. But there are people who don't want us to teach about that, or the one-drop rule, or any of that, because that's not the celebratory history of Thomas Jefferson. If he was engaging in child rape with a 13-year-old, that's not the way you want to think about your founder, right? That's not, it doesn't make them feel good. I will say that the DPI standard says they're supposed to teach civil rights now. That just began in 2012. Whether that's happening or not, I don't know. but I know the DPI standards say they're supposed to.
Seems like a little too little, too late.
So you think we've got another? Do we have another question popped up? I just saw it.
Yeah, we've got another one. As people of color in the Chippewa Valley, have you ever felt intimidated/targeted by the Eau Claire Police Department? I know that we've seen a lot of aggression from police departments in larger urban areas, but has it ever happened here to you?
I have not been targeted by the Eau Claire Police Department since I have been here. However, I did live in Bloomer, Wisconsin with my husband for a little while, and I was pulled over. One time I accidentally made an illegal U-turn by Main Street. I didn't even know that was a law. So I did that and I was pulled over, and the cop began to ask me questions such as like, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I've lived in Bloomer for like 5 years, and like how old I was, and was asking me questions that I know he would have not asked my husband. So no, I have not here in Eau Claire. But around Eau Claire, I have.
I feel like I've gotten pulled over, well, when I was younger. I don't know, like, just like if they would see like my poof on the top of my head, and like a license plate light was out or something. It was always something silly, something hanging out hanging on the rearview mirror. And it's like, okay, like whatever. I didn't necessarily feel like I was in a lot of danger. I mean, they make me nervous, of course. But I think they just be bored. There's so many cops here, they're bored.
I would have to say that I've definitely been targeted by the police in the Eau Claire area, and I can't say that there is a lot of bad police in the area, because there's a few that are pretty good that I know, that I've talked to, that are nice. But then there's also police that I've dealt with, and when we're in a situation where most of the people around me are not black, why am I the one that's being singled out? Or is it because of the way I look? Or because it can't be the things I've said, because I didn't say anything. I'm a very quiet person, so I'm not going to say anything. But then why is the person of color being confronted out of a group of a large amount of people? So that, I think you get that a lot in Eau Claire when you're in crowds of people, and it's easy for them to just point out, okay, well, if there's something going wrong, I think it triggers something in their mind, well, this person might be the source of the problem.
Yeah. One time I was on Water Street and I saw a car full of the students, like UWEC students. They're all black, and like, I was just standing there. I was like, I'm just gonna stand here and watch and make sure everything is gonna be okay here, because the cop was getting kind of aggressive and was like banging on the window, and like they wasn't even doing nothing. They just like had pulled up their car and parked, and the cops were just around, and it was like, just leave them alone. They're not doing nothing. So I mean, things like that happen. They happen around here.
I've seen it on a professional level. I was a social worker in another county around Eau Claire, and the police officer came to make a report, and he was waiting for me to come out into the hallway to get him so I can write up the report. And when I came out, he looked at me like he didn't realize I was the professional. And I was like, hi, I'm Delisha. And he just looked at me, and I'm like, I'm the social worker. Oh, like he just assumed that like I wasn't, like I couldn't be the professional. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I've had that on the professional level for sure.
My husband, not here in Eau Claire, my husband works in Chippewa, and he's a martial artist, so he was practicing with a bow stick over at Irving Park. And a bow stick is kind of like a glorified broomstick. It's a giant stick, it's fairly light. Somebody called the police a couple of times, and they did those slow roll drive-bys. And we're joking, 45-year-old black man with a stick, he's not gonna do anything, doing what looks like dance moves. How is this scaring you? But that's a racism by cop. That's a racism by proxy. And he's had a couple of stops.
Just when we were coming here today, it might not have been racism, but as we were walking to the door, a police officer drove by and waved. what are we waving at here?
Yeah.
Right, mind's business.
I don't get it. Because there was a bunch of white people walking down the street too.
He didn't wave to nobody else.
We got to talk to them about being friendly to everybody.
Yeah.
I don't get what we're waving at here.
Right.
Well, we have a question here, and I guess this does come off of it. It comes off of the have you experienced the police intimidation? Have you experienced racism in general here?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Of course.
I have a list.
Oh, you have a she came prepared. Come on.
She came prepared.
Come on down. Come on down.
She came prepared.
Wow, she
admit
said I have a
forgotten
list.
some of them.
I didn't write no list. I feel underprepared.
I have to come prepared. Here we go.
Yeah.
But go on ahead.
so-
You better read the list now. Come on.
You got a list. I got to let you go.
I got a list.
It's the whole paper. She's got the whole page.
I do.
How many instances is this?
Many.
Well, you were at Stout, right?
I was at Stout.
Okay, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that way.
Hey, you know what? It's all bad.
Okay, so I just remember like growing up in Chippewa and
She came with a list.
I got my list. Okay, so I was walking down the street by Homestead School in Chippewa, and I remember this pickup truck was coming, and I like turned and looked, and I remember one of my neighbors was in the passenger side, but the driver, I didn't know who that was. And I remember the driver looked at me and he spit on me and called me the N-word. And my neighbor, the look on his face, like he's white, but he turned ghost white because he knew who I was. And he was just like, oh, but he didn't say anything either. And they just like, sped off. And I just remember like, that just like really took my breath away. Like, whoa, like I just never, So, and in Chippewa, it was okay for the longest time to have Confederate flags. Like, it was called Hick Row, and there was this row of pickup trucks. And when you'd, drive your car in, you see that row right away. And it was like nothing but Confederate flags. And I just never understood that because you live in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Like, why do we have, Confederate flags at the school?
The North.
And eventually yeah, and you lost. And
Yeah, right.
yeah,
You lost.
you
Take
lost.
the flag down.
Yeah.
You lost, and we're never giving that flag in Minnesota back again. Suck it up.
Yes. So that eventually the school, I think a bunch of us, like 3 students of color, we went to the principal and whatever, but eventually it was banned. You could not have Confederate flags. You could not wear the hunter orange color because then they were wearing that color. I also remember I felt like as a person, a student of color, I was targeted more. And I don't know if they just, one time in particular, I remember we were in class and this substitute teacher who was a teacher, but he was just stepping in. Some kids were saying derogatory stuff about Martin Luther King and but I'm the one who got in trouble. But I was the one defending and being that is racist. And I'm all about social justice anyway, so I was probably loud, but I was the one who got in trouble, and I just could not understand that. So my dad ended up coming to school and having a talk with the teacher, and I just remember I felt like that happened a lot. And then as I got older and I was reading more, we know that Black children, girls,
Are especially
targeted in the classroom. Medically, with my first daughter, I was about 21, 22 when I was pregnant with her. I didn't quite have my voice yet, but I remember at the end of my pregnancy with her, at the end, this OB, this gynecologist person came in, and I had gestational diabetes. Anyway, I had to do extra checks, and I remember she ended up saying that she wanted to do a pap smear or something. And I said, why? I'm almost time for delivery. I don't need any of this. Well, she actually told me to go over to the bed and drop them. She didn't give me anything to change into. And I asked her, I said, you're gonna stay in the room? You're not gonna go get a nurse? And she's like, well, I'm not gonna look at you. I'll just keep looking at the screen. So anyway, she ended up giving me all these extra STD checks and stuff like that. And I know that if I was a white woman, that would have never happened. In fact, when I tell that story, my white friends say, Delisha, I am so sorry, that has never happened to me. I've never had to experience that. on a professional level, like I've had like white coworkers, if I say something, instead of coming to me, they always come to my supervisor, and then my supervisor has to come talk to me about it. You know, I've had, at one of my social work jobs, I've had the director say, I just don't know what your personality, if you fit in here. And I've been in the break room and people have asked me, like, well, why can't white people say the N-word? And I'm like, I'm just trying to eat my soup. I don't understand. Like these microaggressions. Like they had finally found a black person and they had all these questions. So they just wanted to ask me.
They forgot Google was a thing.
Yeah, like, and then I remember when I was pregnant with my son last fall, I was walking into the courthouse and I was big and pregnant and I'm walking in and this one lady goes, ma'am, and I like turn around. She's like, do you know where the WIC office is? And I was like, oh, like, you want me to take you to the WIC office? And she's like, no, do you need to go to the WIC office? And I was like, I am an employee here of the courthouse. Like, no, and I just like went off on this lady.
I would have snapped.
Yeah, I was just like so upset. But, and also churches, you know, I'm not going to, I forgot what you said about, you know, I'm not going to talk about this, I'm not going to identify the church.
To protect the ugly.
We will protect the guilty.
Yes, I will protect the guilty. And, you know, I have called out, I've come to pastors and I've said, you know, you've talked about abortion, you've talked about gay, you know, whatever. But you have not even talked about all the shootings of the unarmed black men. This was back in 2016. The pastor said he didn't know how to. He's like, well, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, well, you could say something. Just recently, I had approached him again, and this pastor ended up like deleting me and blocking me on Facebook. Like he completely shut down my voice. He didn't want to hear the black voice. And I just noticed in those groups, like I was okay until I started talking about racism, until 2016.
Yep.
And then you talked about salons, where I feel like the salons in the Chippewa Valley, I've had to work really hard. I've had to call, do you cut?
Oh yeah, no, I just don't get,
Do you cut ethnic hair? And just recently a salon, and I'll protect the guilty on Water Street, I've asked about extensions, and no, we don't work with ethnic hair. Okay, not Water Street, Barcel Street, but yeah, so those are just a range of different aspects in my life of racism, and because of this, I've, you know, like, we know that black women die at higher rates in hospitals, you know, having babies. So I've chosen to have my baby at home with midwives who respect my culture and stuff like that. So, you know, we've had to make different choices to you know, protect ourselves. So.
And part of that's because medical professionals will sometimes stereotype us.
Yes.
Because I complained about exhaustion and being tired for about a year before my breast cancer was diagnosed.
Oh my gosh.
And it was diagnosed with a random mammogram. And so my internist was like, well, you didn't you feel all these things? Yeah, I complained about them. Well, why didn't they do any tests?
Because you're black.
They think that we can tolerate a lot of pain. And
or they think we're drug seeking.
Or we're, you know, we're exaggerating. And my husband also didn't get the care for his asthma he should have. But that's that, and we're in one of the best medical systems in the world here.
Absolutely. I bring my mom is white. I bring my mom to all of my doctor's appointments. And if I ever have to go to the hospital, I've had shoulder surgeries, my mama always gotta come with me. I'm not going without her. I will reschedule. I'm not going without her.
And your mother's fierce.
Absolutely. She sure is.
I know
She's
your
a
mother.
force, yeah.
She's a force of nature.
it's great.
I mean, is this what you're feeling too?
I would say it's. I'm seeing it from a different point of view, obviously, because I'm not a female, but I'm just hoping I don't have to go through the same kind of problems with my daughter when she reaches those ages, because I will probably not be the nicest person.
I think that Raymond and I know each other on a person. I'm friends with his sister, but I remember one time we went to Ross, and like this little white worker was like following us around. You were trying to get an outfit for something. We just getting followed around, just little stuff like that. It's just like,
the little things add up after a while.
After a while, it can be, you just go all day, if you run errands all day long, and like you just see certain little things like that. You get home, you're like, dang, I am tired. And it's because it's like the mental work, because you have to, like you said, to protect yourself, you got to make different decisions. I don't go to the store with a backpack.
No.
I wear a fanny pack most of the time, because what I'm going to put in I'm not stealing nothing.
I have
I'm
to
gonna put in a
decide what kind of clothes I want to wear so I don't get judged differently.
Right.
For the kind of clothes I want to wear.
Right.
I
Right.
like my jewelry. If I want to wear my jewelry, I don't want to have to worry about walking down the street and getting shot for wearing it.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Like I tell my kids too, my daughter will be like, well, can I open my candy? You do not open that candy in this store, not till we get outside. And I say it really loud as we leave Target. I paid, I'll just make loud statements. Like, I got the receipt here.
So they always want to check my receipt.
Yeah.
They always want to check my receipt. And I'd be like, no, sorry, can't.
I will be honest, I will not go into Walmart.
I don't, yeah.
I've been followed in Walmart, and I had enough of it. It's weird. I go to Target because I have enough students who work at Target. They know who I am.
No.
But when my son was a junior, he knew he wanted to be an engineer. So we had him in Algebra 2. The counselor put him into some chip design class instead. And when I called and said, no, he needs Algebra 2 to get into college, oh, well, the chip design class will take care of his math for graduation. No, he's going to college for engineering. Well, we can't change him. And you just have to understand, no. And that's when, I don't lead with the PhD, but that's where it came. Hi, my name's Dr. And I will come down and pull this school down around your ears, because I know what Title IX lawsuit means. And they moved him.
Yeah.
But think of that happening to somebody whose parent didn't know how to do that. And that happens here in the school district, and that was just 2017. That was 2017. So we want to take a minute here, and I want to reintroduce y'all so that anybody who is coming in can know who we have here today. So Delisha, will you start?
Sure. I'm Delisha Bates-Hansen, and I'm originally from South Texas by Austin. I've lived here in Eau Claire, Chippewa Valley area for 21 years. I've graduated from UW Stout, and I'm a social worker at Eau Claire County Department of Human Services.
I'm Rachel Pride. I grew up here in Eau Claire. I've been here since I was probably 7 years old. Moved here in 2nd grade. I went to South Middle School, Memorial High School. I went to CBTC for a semester. I do work on progressive political campaigns, and this upcoming next year, I will be the AmeriCorps member at South Middle School.
My name is Raymond Clayton. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I've lived in Eau Claire since 2000. Went to school in Eau Claire CBTC for business management, went to school in Minneapolis for audio production and engineering, and now I'm pursuing my master's degree in business management entertainment through Full Sail Online.
So we have a question here. We've been talking about micro and macro aggressions, because some of the stuff, they call it micro, but really it's covert, passive-aggressive, type stuff. So what kind of toll does that take on you when you're living here?
I think, like I just said, like you run errands all day long, I'd be exhausted. I'd be like physically tired. Like I just have to sit down and like not hear anything, but just like get my mind back right, ground myself. Cause it's a cold world out there, especially here.
Would you say the same?
I would say definitely I am tired, and on different levels. For instance, my daughter's gonna be she's gonna be in the 4th grade this year, and my littlest one my middle one will be in 4K, and I'm looking at what songs are they singing. You see, I had to talk to the school about this monkey and alligator song, and so I'm constantly teaching the teachers that some of the songs you are singing and teaching my kids are racist, So I'm constantly like, now I'm looking at, what are they reading? What did you talk about Martin Luther King Day? And I'm just like listening and stuff. And in my, own professional, I am so blessed to have fantastic coworkers. But I'm also on the edge, always making sure, I can't get too comfortable. I gotta listen to what people are saying and treating and stuff like that. So yeah, I think in 2016, after the election, I was so depressed. I'd say I was probably depressed 2 years, because when I knew how many people voted for Donald Trump around me, I just really felt like, wow, people around me are almost not like against me, but
they're against you.
Yeah.
Like we are not on the same team.
Yeah. So I think that just really, that took a lot. And then around here, I don't know if we even have any therapists of color to even.
Stacey Jackson, I think, is the only therapist of color here, and she's at the university. She's a PhD tenure-line professor, but she also counsels.
Okay.
But I think she's the only person of color, the only black therapist that I know of in the 3-county area.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're saying you feel like you have to be hyper aware.
Mm-hmm. You have to be ready to go outside. Like, I avoid going outside because we, like, as humans, I feel like if something is different, we see it. Like, if there's a whole bunch of, say one of these chairs behind us was bright white, we would see the bright white chair. So when you're black and you go into a place that is all white, they're gonna see the black thing. So now every single place that I go into, no matter if you are looking at me to be derogatory or just because you observe it, like, you still see it, and that's what you have to deal with every single place that you go into Eau Claire. So I'm gonna stay at home.
And yet,
so I don't have to deal with that.
And yet we want them to see us,
But yeah.
right? I want white people to see us so that they're not just getting that stereotypical black person on TV. Like, you can see me, like,
I'm not going to jump out and shoot
my life.
yeah, we are like normal people. We go grocery shopping, like, we're just normal, just like you. Like, we love our children just like you love your children. We have people that we care about. And so on one hand, I can totally relate to, that comment. And at the same time, that hyper awareness, like, we have to be out there.
Do you feel like there's some places you can't go? Like for me,
yes.
Walgreens, I won't go to the bars. Well, partially, no one who's an adult should go to any student bar on Water Street. That's just...
No.
That's it's icky, and faculty really need to stay out of there.
Yeah.
But, bars in general make me hyper aware and nervous because I'm aware that drunk people are more likely to say idiotic things.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like there's places where you have to be even more aware, or you just avoid them?
There's bars in Eau Claire and Wisconsin. If you're black and you walk into these bars, it will get silent.
Yeah. That's happened to me in Chippewa.
It will go silent.
It's just silent, and they just stare.
Well, that happened to me at the VFW on Water Street. And I swear, it was like Shane. It
will go silent.
And it's, I don't have a trench coat on, and I don't have a 20-gauge shotgun, so, y'all need to just look away. And I was meeting somebody there, and when she came in, they didn't turn to look at her the same way. It's like, what? Y'all never saw a black person before? Come on. And it was the VFW. I just wanted to get a ham sandwich.
But then if you were like, if I was at the VFW, then I would explain, like, my parents are part of the VFW. My mom's an Iraq veteran.
Right.
So then they would want to talk to me.
Yeah.
But when I first walked in here, you guys didn't know that.
Yeah.
And looking at me like I was going to cause a problem.
I find myself always like, people always want to know, like, when I tell people my mom is white, it's like somehow I'm safer. You know what I mean? Somehow I'm safer because a white woman raised me.
You have to validate your piece.
Right, yeah, like I'm not trying to cause a problem. Like, that's always like one of the first questions somebody asks me. Well, which parent is black? Like, don't worry about it. Why is that even that important? But then once I tell them, I know why they're asking at this point in my life. Once you tell them, and they're like, okay, all right, cool. I don't know.
You had that same experience that they try to figure out?
Yeah, I think like white people I think sometimes growing up around here, they just assume like you must be half black and half white. I'm actually half Mexican and half black. So, and then my husband is white, so then they're all jumbled up into this beautiful mess. So, yeah, I remember growing up here and people were like, do you know your dad? Yes, I know my dad. You know, it's just like those comments, like.
And I don't really know my dad, but like, why would you ask me that?
Why
I don't
would
know
you? You know why they're asking.
Right. Because of the stereotype.
Because of the stereotype. Yeah, so I don't know.
There's a lot of questions about hair, I think, that's probably one that really bothers me. I hate that. I hate that business. That's just a mess. It made me want to get fresh with people, you know? That's like something that like, don't even do that. People will just grab onto my hair on wash day too, you know what I'm saying? Like I just washed my hair. Like, can you please leave me alone? And like they always want to touch on hair. How do you get your hair to do that? All these questions, and it's like, or is that a wig? That's always, and it's like, if it is a wig, now we're both uncomfortable. If it isn't a wig, now you're uncomfortable and you look silly. Why are you asking me stuff like that? You know what I'm saying? And if it is, who cares? What does that matter?
Yeah, I get the is it a weave? My hair is up right now, but I usually put it up so people won't grab it.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, that's why I wear my hair on the top of my head.
I have very long hair as well, and I would do you have a weave?
Yep.
I feel like people's fingers like running through my hair.
Yeah.
Why?
That happened to me. I was on a ski trip, which I don't know what I was doing on a ski trip. I was in middle school. I don't know what I was doing on a ski trip, but I was like standing in line to get on the little bunny hill or whatever. And it was like, you know, middle school kid day or whatever. And I turned around, somebody was like grabbing on my hair and I was like, am I tripping? You know what I'm saying? I was like, am I tripping? And I turned around and sure enough, somebody I did not know, I thought I was gonna see somebody I knew at least, somebody who was just like messing with me, but it was like some whole other person that I had never seen before. Like people who you do not know, the audacity. And that starts like we gotta teach the kids to, you know, keep your hands to yourself. Like, mind your business.
I think the hair thing goes both ways too, because when I was in high school, I used to have like a big afro, and people just, can I touch your hair? Like, no. Do I come up to you and ask you to touch your hair?
But then they want to be mad when you say no. Like, how are you going to be mad at me?
I think it goes back to they don't see us maybe as people.
Exactly. I'm not Exhibit A.
This is our bodies. Like, I just don't go, it would be, if I went up to your kids and started touching your kids' hair or coming up to you, that's weird. Why is that okay for you to do to me and my family?
Right.
It's not.
Yeah, my mom definitely was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She was like, swerve. Like,
my dad was too.
Yeah.
I also think that when I had my hair that long, I started to get, I started braiding my hair a lot. And so I would have cornrows in my hair all the time. And then I think that braids, cornrows, like African-American dudes with braids, that causes you to get a lot of police attention, because for some reason when I had braids,
look like you already
I got stopped by the police every week. Why? I don't know. I've been living in the city my whole life, but now all of a sudden you want to start talking to me every single day.
It's a stereotype.
Yeah.
Come on.
When I was waitressing and I would put weave in. I don't wear weave no more. I just do braids or leave my hair natural, but I would put a weave in, like a closure, you know what I'm saying? And it'd be long, you know, white girl hair. I was probably passing white. And I would make so much more money. Like on Sunday mornings after church, I would make so much more money. But if I left my hair natural, like even if it was like nice and slicked up, like it wasn't, you know, messy or dry or anything like that, it's like that, it affects you. These little things, they really affect you. It can affect your money. It can affect the way you feel about yourself.
Jobs. When I go for a job interview, I always straighten my hair. And that is so sad. I always straighten my hair.
Yes.
To look as white as I can.
Yeah. I always try to put my hair up as tight as possible so that you can't see how curly it is, and like slick it back so nice so that that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at me and doing the interview.
So we have a question that says, you know, is there a relationship then between these experiences and how we feel and what we see? Is what we're seeing on the TV and the cell phone cams, is that helping to make us exhausted too?
I think what they're saying now is before the technology era, like the era that we're in right now, the same stuff was going on. They just weren't filming it. And now I can send it to you like what happened yesterday.
Yes.
Imagine if nobody had a smartphone that could take video. Who would have seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody.
Or the witnesses, the people involved, the people who were there, they would be the only ones, and it would be their word against
say,
the
she
officer.
say.
Right.
But I think with this question, what really happened to me, it was interesting because in 2016, I was like, oh, like social justice, all these black men were shot and killed that summer right before the elections.
Right.
This time around, George Floyd, and then, the pandemic, and then George Floyd, and watching that video, like there was times where I couldn't even say anything. It was just like, and I don't know if it was just like also hearing him call to his mama and like me, and I have a son, and just, I had no words. All I could just say is, like it hurt me. And I was so depressed after that. And I think a lot of black people after George Floyd, well, we're upset by all of them. There's something about George that really caused black folks to go into a depression. I just think it was different, the calling out. I mean, I watched his funeral. And, I couldn't help but think, too, that he was calling out to his mom. And then she was there. She was there with him. So I think seeing it's a double-edged sword because we're now starting to see more cops killing black people because of the videos. And I can't speak for all of us, but for me, there's a depression there, it's such a sadness.
Do you think, too, that we have this video in front of us, everybody can see it, and there's still people who want to deny the reality that we're seeing, and that somehow that makes it hard for us to focus?
Because they refuse to show the good that black people are doing in the communities. Like, there's plenty of communities, these same communities where these people are dying. If you take even a look at Minneapolis, when the riots that were going on there, they were talking about it was black people burning down the cities. Well, they pulled 3 white kids from North High School, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, burning down the cities. You saw the black people in the community trying to fix it, like bringing food, bringing diapers for people who are losing stuff. They don't want to show that stuff on the mainstream media. They just want to show, oh yeah, these black dudes out here burning stuff down, destroying everything.
American Indian movement was patrolling, and they found 3 white kids from Wisconsin. And the kids originally said they're from Eau Claire, then they wanted to say they're from St. Croix. It appears they're from Eau Claire, but they sure as heck were not from Minnesota.
So the question, so the question that you had asked, and I can see, like, we have this happening, and then you still have those people who are like denying. Like America watched a police officer murder a black man. Like, you murdered him and we all saw it. And yet you have these groups of people who want to deny that. And that right there is so painful. Like,
it's
how
so
can
heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, it's painful, it's almost like, I've seen that in my own life. If I'm talking about an experience that happened to me, and then a white person like starts questioning me about it, and like my experience isn't true. Like, I just think that's so hurtful.
And they don't question other people in the same way.
Yeah, they don't.
I think that it's good that we had the cell phones. I think it's like, it makes me sick to my stomach, you know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't watch Jacob Blake get shot. I couldn't do it.
No, you can't.
He pulled his gun, he shot twice, I turned the video off, I couldn't watch it. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. But I am happy that there's a video in the first place, or that there are videos of what happens in the first place, because now it's like, you see it, it makes it harder for them to deny.
Yeah.
They can still try, but that means that we're making a little bit of progress, because it's harder to deny. Because look at the look.
Yeah.
It's right here. Like, there's no way around it.
Does it feel somewhat like, at least, it used to be people would say that the racism in the North was worse because it was covert. At least in the South, you knew who the racists were versus who they were not. Does that feel like it, or does it feel like the overt racism in your face hurts just as much?
Be covert, don't ever bring it up around me. If you want to be internally racist for the rest of your life and be miserable by yourself, and don't let your thoughts affect other people around you. Go ahead and be miserable in a cave or something.
I think racism is racism. I was having a conversation about this recently with someone, and they said that, well, he's not like super racist, like he doesn't say the N-word, but he just like posts political, like, I'm like, but that doesn't matter because it's all harmful to all of us. Any kind of racism is harmful to anybody. You know what I mean? Like all of us, white people, black people, brown people, all of us, people. It's not good. Doesn't matter if you're like, stabbing, trying to hang black people. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you're the cop that shot Jacob Blake, or if you just like are just doing microaggressions. It doesn't matter. I don't care what level of racist you are. That doesn't mean anything to me.
See, growing up in Texas, at one point we lived in like these project apartments, and it was interesting because, we talk about defunding the police, but it's not really like, we talk about having community policing, because when you're from that community, you know the people. So when I grew up in this like project, we had police officers living in the apartment complex. They knew who we were. You didn't have these outside people. You knew whose family belonged, with kids, whatever. And growing up in the South, poor white people were with us, poor black people was with us, poor Mexican people. Like, we're all together. And so it was interesting because I was talking to my girlfriend, Chelsea, and she had listened to a podcast, and she had said, like, in the South, like, how did she say it? It was really good. Like, you can, you can be near me, but you can't be above me. Where in the North, it's like, it's okay for you to excel, but we don't really want you to live by us.
Yeah, the segregation. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're in the state which has the most segregated city in the United States 3 years in a row. And it's hardscaped in. I mean, the highways set it up. Mm-hmm. And really, where I grew up in Slidell, they had a fence running down 8th Street, which is where I lived. Mm-hmm. And there were white people on the other side of the fence and black people on this side. And we jumped the fence. Mm-hmm. But that's how close we lived. Mm-hmm. So desegregating the schools meant you just, you all had to go. Whereas in the North, when I moved to Columbus, all the upper middle class and wealthy black people are over in Bearwick, and they have a school. Mm-hmm. And the wealthy white people are over here in Worthington and Upper Arlington. Mm-hmm. And there were highways and things you couldn't walk across. So that made it harder to integrate, and it made it, in some ways, harder to know each other. Mm-hmm. That hardscape, you see it in Minneapolis. Look at the way I-35 goes, and the sound barriers you have. That went through a white neighborhood, as opposed to I-94, which actually went through a black middle-class neighborhood when it went through downtown, and really destroyed it. I
think it's going from more of being about race to being separation based on social class, or like economic class, demographics, where you live. These people that have everything don't want anybody else to have what they have. And I think one way to keep that out is, if we start with this group of people and you guys are with that group of people, instead of it being about race, we'll just separate you by the amount of money that you have, because then we're not being racist. It's just that you can't afford to say, we build a highway here, get a car to drive across the highway. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's just the way I see it, though.
I think in this community, it's more passive-aggressive, more passive racism, which is still racism in itself. For instance, a few years ago, they wanted to have Black Santa at Mall of America.
Yes.
Minnesota nice, Midwestern nice. Those white parents did not bring their kids to see Black Santa because Santa is not black. I hate to tell you, but Santa's not even real. Like, I don't know what you want. I don't even know what.
Right, like, why are we even fighting about this?
Yes, I say
what are we fighting about this for?
Too. I'm like, Jesus.
Oh my! Don't get me started on white
even
Jesus.
start-
Don't even get me started on white Jesus.
White Jesus.
Don't get me started on white Jesus.
Like, I'm like, but this is what they do here. They're not as like loud with it, but they're
passive aggressive.
They have a passive-aggressive racism.
They're racist, and like I used to say this a lot. I think that people are ignorant to their own ignorance, which is like super
don't know.
frustrating because I don't want to be the one. It is not my job. This is not my job to make you not ignorant anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're ignorant to your own ignorance, you ain't ever gonna get it unignorant. So now it's like a rock and a hard place. So like, what am I supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? It's on the ignorant to do it better with that.
Do you feel that some people, because of the way y'all carry yourselves, you carry yourselves like young professionals, do you feel that they whitewash you? That they sometimes make you white in order to make themselves comfortable?
They make me seem like I'm not the same type of black person that would hurt them
Okay.
because of the way that I dress. But if you catch, like I've seen that you could take a picture of me doing what I want to do and then handling my business. There would be two different people. Like it would look like two different people to you, and then I'm gonna get judged differently just by how I look.
I think at first, like especially like in my early 20s and stuff, like a part of that was even, like I can definitely see that. But in 2016, something happened to me. I did
right
not
there with
care.
you. I was over
did
it.
not care. I was something just happened to me, and I like did not care anymore. And I am a black woman, and that's how it is. And then I knew who my true friends were after that. Like they saw me, like you are a woman of color. You are intelligent. I was not like whitewashed to them. They knew, and I knew that like I can say. Sometimes my words may have been harsh because I was so upset after 2016, but I loved, they would just be like, we know what you're saying. Like, that is not, So I think after that, you just figure out, when you start becoming yourself and you can talk about race and stuff, people are gonna get scared, they don't wanna be your friend anymore. But then the people who stay, like, those are the people.
Absolutely.
Have you had any, I'm going to get to this question because that's going to be the last question. Have you had any of the white people around you, though, try to protect you from other white people they knew were racist, were covert racist? Maybe not telling you they were racist, but trying to warn you or keep you away from someone?
When we get to where we're going, this person might say this.
Right.
But why do you need to? I think that's what you're trying to get at.
See,
I shouldn't have to go through that.
I mean, I don't
want to go.
I don't want to go. I'm not coming. I don't want to go.
Why would you?
Don't even bring me over there. Don't bring me nowhere where I'm not. Don't bring me anywhere where somebody might be a little racist, because I will snap off. I will lose all my sense. I'm not the one to bring somewhere to do all that. I'm not the one.
Well, I've had some people slip up to me going, you might want to be careful having a meeting with this person. You might want to make sure you're out in public with them.
No.
Or you might want to make sure it's in coffee and not in their office.
No.
Or you might want to deal with them by email so you have a... and they're not trying to say they're racist and going to try to do something, but they're
trying to say that they're racist and they might try to do something. That's exactly what they're saying.
You might wanna.
That's exactly what they're saying.
Well, I haven't had anything quite like, I'm just trying to think, because I really do think that my mature friend group now that I have now at this time in my life, we're pretty, they're allies. They do their work. They show up. They show up for us. I've had, I have had people be like, oh, I just want to let you know that person's a little bit more conservative. And then I'm like, gotcha, I'll watch out for that person. I'll make sure I won't talk about certain things like that. But I think that if my friends know that person's racist, they're not even hanging out with that person.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think that I really, this place is so small, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know where I could be. I know who I could talk to, at this point. I'm pretty much good. But at the same time, it's like, if you tell me, I'm the type of person, I've always been kind of like this, and especially after 2016, because I cried for like 3 days straight, and then I was like, nope, can't do this, like whatever. So I feel you on that. But you tell me that somebody's gonna be racist, like you shouldn't have said nothing, or you shouldn't even brought me, because now I'm just bringing up stuff. Now I'm gonna make it a mess, because I feel like everybody's always trying to hush stuff down around here. Hush, 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 hush with all that racism stuff. No, I'm not finna hush. I'm not gonna hush. We're gonna talk about this. And it is what it is.
Well, we have a question from the chat.
Yeah, so there are a couple questions actually about white allyship and kind of what are the best practices for white people to be the best allies for people of color. And I mean, we've really been energized after George Floyd's death, and we have had kind of a momentum in this town, but how do we make sure that that keeps up? I mean, I know for me personally, it's not asking people of color to share traumatic experiences for my own benefit. It's reading books by people of color, and it's educating myself on podcasts and videocasts that actually breach on these topics anyway, and not asking people in my community to relive things just for me to have a learning moment. So could you speak to some of those?
Can I jump in first? I know I'm supposed to be the host, but I want to jump in real quick here. I mean, because Uniting Bridges has supported several of the protests this summer, and we'll support the one on Saturday. But one of the things I've seen here is that sometimes we get white activists who they have an idea of what a protest should be. And I have to sit there and say, I don't want my students killed.
Yeah.
So I really want you to shift your idea of what a protest should be, because we get killed faster in these protests than you do. And I'll have some white colleagues who will go, well, the students should just protest it. They should just go shut down a highway or something. And I'm looking at them going, no, then my students get killed. You can use your voice over at city council and get something done. So I think, just getting people to recognize the danger we can be in certain environments is, I think, a part of allyship. Don't invite me to a bar that has a anti-indigenous people thing in it, because I'm gonna walk out because I'm not gonna feel safe either. But I think that's one of the things of allyship. And the other is, I witnessed today a fight in a group I'm in. They were talking about the book White Fragility, and she had talked about weaponized white women's tears.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing was like, don't do it, because when you start crying, then everybody starts pitting you, and the person who was your victim gets re-victimized. And there were several white women in the group going, well, you can't just tell me not to cry. I have a right to my feelings. And it's like, look, if I'm telling you that you're playing the victim and you're weaponizing this and you're creating havoc for me, listen, don't give me lip about it.
Right. I said what I said.
Yeah. I said what I said. Listen, don't do it, or I'm walking out. Which is not what you want to have happen.
Right.
So I was thinking that, that's one part of allyship. One part of allyship is not protecting us. It is working with us and being a partner. It's not seeing us as
different.
As different as the little person.
In some ways, I do think when I'm exhausted, I think it's okay for a white ally to come in.
And take the lead.
For me, yeah. Like if I am so exhausted, I'm so sick and tired of explaining racism and stuff like that, I'm just done. Then they need to come in and take the lead. I think that's
that's with your blessing. That's like tag.
You're in.
I need a sub. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
with my blessing, I think that's okay. I agree. I like that.
I think that to keep the energy up in the community, we need to just come together as a community. I feel like we're not doing enough here in Eau Claire. I don't feel like I see enough. I mean, there's like they put a mural up I'm like, okay, cool, you know what I'm saying? But it just seems like things happen and we just forget about it.
Yeah.
You know
You're
what I'm
prone
saying?
to forget.
The city is trying to have a transformation task force. It was called an anti-racist task force. Now it's a transformation.
I think that would be interesting.
I honestly think we're lucky because our city could be a lot worse. Think about it as Kenosha, or think about it as Minneapolis. I don't see the problems that they faced happening here, but I don't want it to get to that point.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
I don't want it to get to that point.
You know,
I
if a
think
group
that-
like DECI, which is the downtown business group, maybe put on trainings or something. I mean, do we feel like we need to cut? I'm trying to say this in a way that's not going to get me in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble any which way I say it. Do you feel like some of the white people around here need training
Yes.
on how to be around people of color or people who
Yeah.
are not like them?
They're
Yes.
real awkward.
Real awkward, real uncomfortable.
Real, and like we can spot that. Like you are so
I
uncomfortable.
know,
with
that's
me.
the thing. That's what I always say. I'll be like, that person is racist. And people be like, no, what do you mean? I'm like, you didn't see how they was looking at me?
And sometimes
It's just
I'm
like
not even sure if it's that. Sometimes I think that they're worried that they're gonna say the wrong thing. I really think like, I'm afraid I'm gonna say the wrong thing and then it's gonna offend you. Well, I would rather you ask me a question and me correct you, but the thing is that if I'm gonna correct you, then you need to say, thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was offensive. You know, I will make sure not to do that again. I think that's one thing about being a white ally is that if a person of color tells you something's offensive or they correct you, the best thing that you could say is, thank you, I'm gonna do better, I didn't know it, sorry, move on.
When it comes to the ally, for me, I think it's just as simple as what your parents taught you when you were a kid. Treat me how I treated you. If I lived in this community, what was it we talked about at the very beginning, 1.5% when you include the people in the jail. That means every person that I'm around is most likely going to be white, and my whole life, I've had to treat you fairly. It's not that hard to treat me fairly. I don't need you to be my friend everywhere we go. Just, I've treated you equally my entire life. You can do the same thing.
I think that's good too. Yeah, the golden rule, right? The golden rule, right?
Not that hard.
I think that we can get it together here in Eau Claire with the help of like the news, WAU, WQOW, all of that. Like the comments, there'd be racist comments. They just go off.
I'll read the comments.
I can't even look anymore. But it's things like that. It's like the businesses, all the money makers in the city. You know, who got the money? Who's got the money to make so we can do this? So we can get the training. So we can have the programs. So we can do after-school programs. So we can, you know what I'm saying? So we can get it right up here. Whoever got the money, they need to come on with it.
I think as a parent, I know I've had a lot of people private message me and be like, what can I do? And I don't respond because I don't feel like, there's so many resources. You can Google it. I don't need to tell you what
Or
to
you
do.
can send them to me and I'll send them to the university professors.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Send them to me.
But I think, first of all, we have really got to expose our kids, our white kids, your children to other people. And I think a lot of times in like the 30s and up, you didn't acknowledge black, you didn't acknowledge color. So I remember having a conversation with some friends, and I was talking about that, and they were like, well, we don't want our kids to acknowledge color. And I'm like, so you're saying that you don't want them to see me. So they invited us over for dinner, and one of their kids said, why is she gray?
What?
How did
that work out?
I just started laughing, and the parents were red, and I was like, obviously, kids see this. We need to be talking to our kids, and it can be as easy to raise little allies, in the elementary school and stuff. It can be as easy as here, a book. Start reading stories with kids of color.
Anti-racist baby, that's a good one. Shout out.
Anti-racist baby. They learn wow, these other cultures, they care about the same things that we care about.
Like, start exposing your kids
To the differences.
Doc
Christmas-
McStuffins is out there.
Yes, Christmas music. It doesn't have to just be white Christmas music. Play some Jackson 5. I mean, you can look for like Motown Christmas music. It's the same music, but sung by black people so they can hear different tones. Like, I mean, there's so
And
much
it's
stuff.
good music.
And it's good music. I want to listen
Like,
to
y'all
that.
missing out. Come on.
Yeah,
now.
like-
Right.
Yes, or, you know, there's just so much we can do as parents. I just think you just gotta be creative. I led a group called Be the Bridge to Racial Unity at my church. And, you know, it's like teaching white people, this is how, you know, when's the last time you had a person of color at your house for dinner? You know, how do you strike that conversation? Maybe not ask her about her hair at Starbucks, okay? But maybe like do this, you know, like here's some prompts.
Right.
And it was really helpful for them, and it's just been beautiful to watch them, you know, like, oh, I have. So I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do as an ally. I don't have the answer how we can keep the momentum going after George Floyd, but I really think we are prone to forget until something like what just happened with Mr. Blake.
We need to weave it into our everyday life.
Yes.
I mean, it can't just be one and done, and people
Yeah.
just want it to be one and done.
That's not how it works.
Well, white people they just get sick of it.
Well, they get sick of it because
But
they can
I'm
avoid
sick of
it.
being afraid of dying. Like, you know what I mean? Like compare the two things, they're not equal.
Well, and I think that's a really important point, is that many people of color are so exhausted by having this conversation over and over and over and over again. And now it's time for white allies to actually kind of put their money where their mouth is and
Exactly.
say something, do something about it.
Like when you see something, say something.
Exactly. And it's not up to people of color to constantly need to remind us why we need to be educated and remind us why we need to be good allies. We just need to get used to doing it consistently and being good allies consistently. Like you were saying, it's not a one and done. It's a work in progress.
I think they need to start with the kids because, like, I'm old enough. If you want to be racist to me, I can handle that. Whatever. You're not gonna, unless you physically hurt me, I'm not gonna be hurt by your words. But like, we have generations of kids that are coming up, and I don't want all the generations are getting, or all the races are getting mixed at such a fast rate. Like, I don't think there's gonna be as much differentiation as there was in the past. And if you look at the racism, it all stems back usually like the older generations. So why don't we start teaching these younger generations just to not be racist? Because racism isn't like, you're not born racist. So let's just start with the kids.
I think if we work with the kids and work with the adults, adults work with the adults, adults work with the kids, kids work with the kids. We all gotta work together, and maybe we could get it together.
And that's where I want to leave us. And a giant book plug here, Ejimo Oluo's So You Want to Talk About Race. You know, if you need to start, you read that book. And then you read Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. Because I think that those two books, along with Isabel Wilkerson's Case book that's out, and look up Isabel Wilkerson on NPR. She's got these really great interviews out there. If you don't know this history, that's where you start. And that's where you start thinking about it. So we've got 1 minute because the conversation was good up here. And we've got stuff in the chat, so we have stuff for new programs, and we'll probably be having these people back.
We'd love
and
to-
bring
I would
them
love to be
back
back.
again.
I would love
You're
that.
gonna be back? Good.
Coming back, right?
I'm gonna be back.
If you guys want me
Thanks
back,
to
I'll come back.
Pablo, Uniting Bridges, Converge, my wonderful panelists.
Thank you for having us.
Adam, my guys here who are running this for us. Next week, we will be talking about voting and the importance of voting with David Carlson from ACLU Wisconsin and Sarah Ferber, who is the Assistant Director of Wisconsin Expo. This will be recorded and you will be able to find it on YouTube in about 2 or 3 days. Or you register, just re-look at us again. So this is Selika Ducksworth-Lawton on the behalf of Conversations of Color. See you next week.